Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sex Sells podcast, the podcast where we talk about culture, dating, relationships, and psychology from a male and a female perspective. I hope you are enjoying your week. I hope you're enjoying your day. We took a week off and we're back. We're refreshed. We're energized. We're going to start with a fun one. We're just going to do a fun one, guys. It's going to be Icks and red flags. Now, we've done previous podcasts about Icks and red flags, so we're going to maybe look at some niche icks, some niche red flags, some interesting ones, and this one should be fun. We're not going to have any announcements on today's podcast, but if you do want to come see a comedy show and live in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, or Newcastle, go to comedyuntamed.com. Eliza, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Same as always. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really
what's
good.
What's been happening on your week off? Did you rest? Did you party? Did you work?
I did a bit of both. Actually, mainly resting. I didn't work, which is hard for me to do.
Yeah, good on you.
Just kind of last Sunday, I was a sloth. I just Uber Eats, McDonald's, and watched TV for a couple of hours, and pretty much didn't do anything. I had a few White Claws.
God.
It was fun. It was disgusting, but it was fun. It was just one day of getting it all out of my system, and then, back to it on Monday. It was good.
I was thinking about that the other day. If you take like designated weeks, like 4 weeks leave off, if you take blocks or if you just take a day here and there, you're always working.
You can't help it when you're on social media and when you work for yourself. It's very hard to detach and properly have a day off, because I always know even if I have a day off, there's always things to do, and it's more about just detaching from what I have to do, because I know if I get that done, then I can have the day off tomorrow, and it's this never-ending cycle of
I wish I was like that.
Do things. Really?
I'm like
it's
the
not good.
polar opposite of that. Adrian's like that too. He can't rest until everything's done, but his list will never be done. I'm like, I will rest until the very last urgent minute. Unless it's something to do with my baby, of course, but I'm a queen resting.
Well, that's probably good. You probably are a happier person, whereas people like me are obsessed with organizing and, having things done and listed and borderline OCD basically. But hey, we get things done, so that's always good.
Exactly.
Tell me what you think of this story. This is quite funny. So I was having dinner with Andrea, and we had ordered some, Thai food? Yeah, red curry. And, I think I was being a bit lazy. I didn't put the curry in a bowl or anything, so just eating it out of the plastic container. And so I had the roti, just like using that to eat the curry. And then I just wasn't focused, and my beard kind of went into the curry a little bit.
Oh.
And so then the bottom of my beard just got a bit of yellow curry on it, and she just immediately got a huge ick.
That's so funny, Neil.
It is funny because I can see that the image of that is very. I can see how that would give off an ick, like a grown man getting curry on his beard, like not being able to eat it properly. So
literally, do you know what's funny is when you mentioned before, let's talk about icks. I wrote down like 3 icks, and one of them was food around the mouth. On a guy, I can't. If a little crumb or something on the beard, especially if it's like coffee, that's okay. If it's a little bit of milk froth, that's fine. If it's food, it's not okay. That and the other one I put was sausage breath.
Sausage breath.
But that's just a personal experience I've had.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Someone picked me up from his car. A guy I went on a couple of dates with once, and he said, I just had a sausage, and then tried to kiss me. And all I could smell was the sausage on his breath, and as a vegan, it was so gross.
Anything to do with hygiene. Anything to do with hygiene or a lack thereof seems to be what gives off the biggest ick. And do you have any others that come to mind, or any areas?
I had one the other day when I was in the gym, and the guy in front of me, he was like being all like kind of like macho, he was trying to like teach his girlfriend or a girl how to do things, and he was like kind of being all like, oh, I come here often, and then he was doing squats right in front of me, and every time he, he squatted down, I could see his ass crack, and it was so, it just was. I just couldn't handle it. It was so gross to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't even that it was gross. I think it was just so funny considering how before I was rolling my eyes at him being like, this guy seems a bit like cocky. And then I get to see his butt crack every time he did a squat.
Good old builder's crack. No, the plumber's crack. Yeah.
Something about a butt crack, even on Adrian, like on anyone, I've never found a butt crack sexy. Just ever.
That's interesting because
when it peeks over the top of pants.
True.
Not on its own. Yeah.
I think men are the opposite. I think for a lot of guys, if they see even just like a hint of butt crack, that's a turn on. Yeah. Depending on the person, but it definitely wouldn't gross me out.
Yeah,
so, yeah. Icks are funny, aren't they? Because I don't remember when I was a kid or a teenager. Do you even remember the term ick existing? I don't think it did.
No, I was just reading up on this before, and I like read the sentence when you came online, so I can't remember. But it like originated not too far, not too long ago on a TV show or something. It was when the term was coined, so it kind of didn't have a word back in the day. Apparently, that's just what I read on like an article.
Because they do say that women generally have a higher disgust sensitivity than men. And if I remember correctly from that book, which I'd love to hear your thoughts on because you read it, hormonal, a large reason for that disgust sensitivity is because if a woman is carrying a baby, she is more prone to bacteria and pathogens.
Yeah.
And they also said that when a woman is ovulating, she's more disgust sensitive because that's when the potentially fertilized egg is the most prone to being infected with bacteria or some sort of pathogen. And that maybe manifests in just a lower threshold of disgust sensitivity when it comes to romantic partnerships. Or it could be that men are just slobs. So who knows?
That's so, I forgot about that. And I'm addicted to creating data on my own life. So I like always track things that are happening with me and like record things and stuff like that. And I've talked about this before, but I have like really bad misophonia where I cannot stand when I hear people eat. Like that, basically misophonia is when you get an irrational rage or emotional reaction to a specific sound. So for some people it's nails on a chalkboard or whatever. For me it's eating and nails on like scratching paper. Oh, I can't deal with it. And when I'm out in public and I'm eating and restaurants, whatever, it's totally fine. It's only when it's quiet and one-on-one do I get triggered by it. And sometimes I get triggered so bad. I never like react in rage. Actually, yeah, sometimes I do. But me raging is like silent where I just have to get up and move like 2 meters away before I have a meltdown.
Wow.
But there's a whole subreddit for it. And every single person on it has ADHD or autism. So maybe there's something there. Who knows? But yeah, really interesting. Anyway, my point is there's certain times where I can like grit through it and be fine with it because usually it's around Adrian. We eat together. And other times I just cannot. So I'm gonna start tracking that and along with my cycle and seeing if there are certain times I'm more sensitive to it. Super fascinating.
Would you say you're disgusted by the sound of eating, or is it more some other kind of repulsion that isn't necessarily described as disgust?
It's disgust and anger. Like I'm the least angry. Literally nothing makes me angry except the sound of one person.
Can I ask you something else? When you get an ick from something else other than the misophonia, do you feel angry as well? So if that guy with the sausage breath, does that make you? It doesn't make you angry?
No.
Okay, well then that's That's interesting. I wonder if anyone who's listening can relate. Let us know in the comments.
I actually
on YouTube.
had heaps of people when I talked about this ages ago, having misophonia, message me being like, one, I didn't know there was a term for that, or two, I've had this lifelong and it is like the bane of me, and trying to explain to someone else what it is sounds so outrageous because it's such an irrational thing. It's almost like when you have OCD and you've got the compulsive actions that you want to take, that it doesn't make sense, but it's just a reaction that you have. It's just something in your brain. So I've had it for as long as I remember, and I know where it stems from. It was my fucking brother, when we'd eat dinner, would sit across from me and chew with his mouth open, exaggerating it on purpose to piss me off. And I would just have like these insane meltdowns. Like I was like 8 years old. And it still like triggers me so much. And there's no like stemming from where the paper one comes from, where I hate the sound of like fingernails on paper. And Remy's going through this phase where anything he touches, he just goes like this on anything. And I hate it, but I don't get angry at him, obviously. But yeah, it's interesting.
Where do you think that comes from, with the older brothers always annoying their younger sisters? Because I definitely did that to my younger sister. Is that just sort of jovial teasing? Is it is it something that is physiologically built into us, or is it a cultural thing?
Yeah, there's
common.
so many. I've thought about this a lot because there's so many avenues that it could be. Like I know personally that my brother was like that from the day I was born. So he's 2.5 years older than me. My mum said, since I was a baby, he would bite me because he was jealous if I would get attention and be like really aggressive. And then throughout like my childhood, he would try to like drown me in the pool. like hold me underwater for like just a second or two too long. And I have one phobia in my life, which is vomit. And I've had that since my entire life. And he would just follow me the whole time around the house every single day, pretending to vomit, retching, etc. And then it was a chewing thing. And my brother though was like, he's diagnosed ADHD, and he was one of those like ADHD kids that when you think of ADHD without knowing what ADHD actually is, and you think, oh, this is what ADHD is, he was that, like those kids that were bouncing off the walls, little shits, unmanageable. I was an angel child in comparison. But yeah, I think it's just a funny dynamic where it's like the person. And when you think of like even the Stanford prison experiment, which basically the conclusion is when people are given an opportunity to exert power, they will take it. So that's why I think that older, younger sibling dynamic happens. And by the time I had reached like maybe like 12, 13 years old, that relationship changed drastically to like he was very protective over me and we were very close and good friends, etc. But before that, he was such a dick.
It's an older sibling thing, isn't it? Because it's not just the older male sibling to the younger female sibling. Because I remember, and I know we don't usually like to just use TikTok as a form of evidence on this podcast, but again, this is a fun one today, guys. So there's a trend on TikTok, older sibling trauma, and one of them was just the funniest story I've ever heard. It was someone who was irrationally afraid of Michael Jackson. And so the older sister at 2 a.m., they were in the same room, and she would go underneath the bed at 2 a.m. and go, hee hee. And just terrify the younger sister. That is really funny. Just the image of just a 12-year-old girl going under a bed of her 8-year-old sister going, hee hee. And then she also used to say, Michael Jackson's in the closet, he's going to come and get you. So that's pretty funny.
That's so good. I actually do that to Adrian all the time. Not pretend to be
Michael Jackson noise.
No, he's we love watching horrors, and like our favorite like horror category is people that have been like possessed or demons and things like that. So sometimes in the middle of the night, like when it's really dark, I'll like stand in the corner make scary noises. He gets really scared though. He actually gets genuinely scared, which I love. He hates it. But yeah. Random.
Yeah. Well, we all do that. Andrew's very sensitive to horror films and things. So then when we do watch it, I'm always doing things like that as well. So, yeah.
So funny.
On this article I found, someone got the ick for something here. Just give me a sec. Let me find it here. So on a first date, someone went with got into a minor car accident. So no one was hurt. It was just, I don't know, they just bumped into another car or something. And then the man called the police and the tow truck came. Police took a statement or whatever. And then he called his mum. And she says, okay, I get it. He's shaken up. Apparently she asked him how it happened. And then he starts whining and crying, Mom, it wasn't my fault. And she's emphasized like multiple A's and U's here. And then she goes, he was 28. I had the tow truck driver take me home and I never saw him again.
That's so bad. Although I always feel like that one's valid. Like usually when you hear an ick, it's actually not super valid. Like I saw someone was saying that she was going off to meet her boyfriend or the guy she was dating, and it was like at a park, and he attempted to do a pull-up in one of those park activity things, and he failed it, and she immediately just got the
Fair enough. I think that's how. Anytime a man tries to do something that's dominant or assertive or masculine but fails, I can see how that would be funny and potentially ick-inducing.
I actually find it kind of sad when I remember the last time we did a podcast on icks and I watched heaps of TikToks of girls saying what their ick was, and a lot of them were coming down to men doing things that weren't deemed as masculine, like wearing a backpack was one that a million people were talking about, tying their shoelaces. Like men that had to tie their shoelaces in the street. That was another common one. There was heaps and I was like, oh, but he's just like because he's not being super macho or something. Yeah.
Anything that seems to remind someone of childhood or just comes across as something that a boy would do.
Yeah.
Could be something like that, you know, if someone's tying their shoelaces, you usually
and running for the
associate
bus.
that. Yeah,
that was
usually
a huge
associate
one. Yeah.
things like that with a young boy, and so maybe there's just this visceral, minor level of disgust that comes with that, and it is. Yeah, I can see how it would be extremely frustrating for men to hear a list of things that are just basic human behaviors, like wearing a backpack. But you know, I laugh about it when Andrew always tells me when she gets the ick from things, and I just either just own it or we just generally laugh about it.
It's different when you're in a relationship and you kind of just know it's not too serious. Like Adrian at one point started wearing those, you know, those like slides that they're like little massage shoes, so they've got like the pointy. He went through a phase of wearing those, and I was a bit like, you do. I want
to wear well, there's this Bollywood song that went really viral called Nattu Nattu, and it won an award at the Oscars. And I really liked what that guy was wearing. He was wearing this sort of 1950s style smart casual suit dress. It sort of just had a shirt in, I can't remember if it was chinos or just grey suit pants, but then he had suspenders. And I really want to get suspenders and just see what it looks like with just a shirt with maybe the top button undone and then suspenders. And then for some reason, Andrew just was disgusted by the idea of suspenders. I'm still going to get them, but
I like suspenders.
I just thought it was funny that something so banal and simple, because usually it would be, oh, look, a man who actually cares about his fashion, that's attractive. Oh, suspenders, nah, that's gross.
Have you had any icks about her?
I don't get the ick. I don't know. I get if when I was dating, certain opinions people would have would
Yeah.
that would be comparable to getting the ick. Maybe I'd
Yeah.
think, oh, they said something that I didn't, not that I necessarily didn't agree with, but the way they said it, or maybe an opinion that they might have had. Wasn't disgusted by it, but I was, I suppose, turned off by it. But there's never any physical things that I can think of that give me the ick.
Yeah, because now I'm thinking, like, I don't think I've just texted Adrian, being like, when have I given you the ick and what was it? And he just replied, I never have.
Yeah, and that's
So
not
he
just,
says.
and that's not, it's not putting someone on a pedestal either. I don't,
Yeah.
I can't identify with that feeling of disgust.
Yeah.
I think for a man, because men in general would be less disgust sensitive. You look at the male bathroom compared to the female bathroom, things like that.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm average for a man in terms of that sort of disgust sensitivity. I mean, some public toilets I'll go in and be like, okay, this is just atrocious. Even I'm grossed out by this, but most things, blood or bodily fluids or whatever, I don't really get super disgusted by that.
I feel like it's maybe more common with women, and another reason why it's not so much disgust, it's things that you find unattractive. And there's a very small like difference, I would say, between the two. And women are more, in some cases, more sensitive to what they find unattractive compared to men. Because sometimes men can just find any woman in front of them attractive no matter what they're doing. So to put it lightly, like, I'm not serious when I say that, but yeah.
But it's true. Well, there's a
Kind
truth
of.
to that. Yeah, not every
Yeah.
man is like that, but the average man
Yeah.
probably is will find smaller things attractive than the average woman. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'd be some women as well that are just attracted by every single man that they walk past, although I find that very hard to believe.
I see it on Reddit occasionally, but it's usually people that have a lot of trauma and disorganized attachments and etc. and hypersexualization. So they're trying to just seek validation, seek attraction, or they're like desperately wanting to get laid all the time, and they're hyper focused on it, which obviously men experience more. Not all men, but yeah, I do see it occasionally, but definitely sometimes when you scroll through like men's subreddit, like Ask Men, and it's just saturated with like 100 men a day saying that. And I'm like, once every 6 months I see a woman say it, but it's different for us all.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Has anyone like ever pointed out an ick to you on a date? Like that you've
there's
gone
been
on
a
a date
few.
with?
There's also been things I've said, but there was a few sort of misinterpretations as well. Like once I was joking, I was truly joking, but and trying to be sarcastic, but it clearly didn't come across properly. And we were going to a second bar after having had a few drinks at one bar, and then I just sort of jokingly said, "Oh, this is a cocktail bar. That's fine. I'm rich anyway." And I'm not, but I said it in a jokey way. And then she didn't want to go on a second date, and then she told me that particular thing I said. And then I was trying to argue with her saying it was a joke, but then that just probably made her more turned off.
No.
But other than that, I'm sure there would have been things that I did that gave off the ick, but you don't really tell that to someone after a second or third date. So I'm blissfully unaware of what I could have done that turned people off. If I'm thinking about my younger self and certain things that I might have done, yeah, when I was younger, I probably had a bit of pick-me energy, so I'm sure that gave off some icks.
Yeah.
I think most young men probably do. They're either They
Yeah.
either have that kind of pick-me energy or that just unrefined wannabe alpha red pill type energy, and both of them
Yeah.
for intelligent women would generally be unattractive.
I had a guy point out one of his icks about me once, which was the way I texted, because I said ha 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 in caps locks and then afterwards said mate. And he didn't like that I called him mate. And I was like, I wasn't even calling you mate. I was laughing at your joke. But yeah, he hated it. He didn't like that I wrote in caps locks either because it was too aggressive. I was like, hey.
Some guys don't like it when you call them bro, and
Yeah, I understand that.
I call girls bro.
I kind of
I'll
get
say
the
to Andrea,
bro.
I'll call her bro
Oh
sometimes.
God,
She doesn't like, but
I
it's
love
just a
that,
habit.
especially
It's
because
just the
she's so
vernacular.
like she's so pretty and like feminine. The idea of you just calling her bro.
Yeah, true.
I just looked up surveys on the ick, and there are some ones that men have. So a common one is girls that are obsessed with star signs. It gives men the ick.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, men will get the ick from things that aren't necessarily physical, but
Yeah.
just things that they'll say or personalities that they may have, or like it's certain political positions. I mean, I've talked about things that I've personally found,
Yeah.
from my point of view, unattractive when it comes to, say, how people express certain political positions, or whether they give you the opportunity to express yourself without just immediately shutting you down. Things like that, I would get. You could say I would get the ick from that. The star signs, I don't know anyone who takes it seriously. Everyone I know who's into star signs seems to sort of jokingly be into them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know like heaps of girls that are really like live breathe. When I dated a girl, she was like, "You and I, we're gonna work. Like, you're a Scorpio, your moon's in Leo.
Was
I'm
she
a
joking?
Cancer."
Was she being
No, she was
100%? Oh, okay.
she was so serious. Yeah,
Okay. Well, then, yeah, that would be an ick.
and I was like, "Yeah." Like, you're right. I was loving it. I was like, I never had these conversations ever on a date. It was amazing to me.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. So the other ones it said, here's one that men said, 1 in 10 men will get the ick if a woman suggests sharing food on a date. Like,
Cannot relate, but
yeah,
okay,
that's so
interesting.
weird. Yeah. Okay. Smelling bad was the top ick. That's kind of standard. The second top ick was pretending to be more knowledgeable about something than they actually are.
Yeah,
I get that.
yeah, that
Being
would be
overbearing and
universal.
rude,
I
standard.
feel that would
Yeah.
be from both genders. You would think.
Here's a random one. Double texting. That's
What's
the
that?
fourth one. When someone hasn't replied to the first text, so then they send a second text afterwards. Personally, I
Oh,
love
right.
double texters. I love when people follow up with me, or I love when if they haven't like kind of given a segue into conversation, they start another one later on. I love that. But that one's
Yeah, I don't
high
think I
up
can
there.
relate to that one. I mean, if they're just incessantly texting you at all hours of the
Yeah.
day, and then getting mad if you don't reply, there's basic etiquette there that would be unattractive if they're overbearing. But I can't relate to the specifically double texting one.
Yeah, yeah. There's some obvious ones as well, like bad teeth, rude to waiters, living in mess, dirty fingernails, talking too loud.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah,
Baby
if
voices,
they get to an extreme, the baby. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
quirky coloured lipsticks. That's an interesting one from men.
Depends how quirky.
Here's one from women as well, referring to their football team as we. That's a big one.
Yeah, that's. You know what? I
And
agree.
breathing heavily.
I agree with that one because I went to the 2018 game to State of Origin where New South Wales, they did win in 2014, and then they hadn't won for a long time again, and then they won in 2018, and then there's all these men around me that start shaking hands saying, "Yeah, we did it, boys." What did you do? You did nothing. You sat on the sideline, ate a hot dog, and cheered.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Don't say we. You didn't do anything.
Yeah. Here's one that I agree with wholeheartedly is having an Instagram account for your pet.
Yeah, that's...
Actually, I feel bad saying that, but my friend has one, and it's really cute. But she messages me as the pet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And
that's an it. Yeah.
It's so cute and funny because it's her.
Any
but
kind
I
of,
just think, oh God.
Any kind of exaggerated babying or sort of that childish sort of behavior where if you put on the baby voice or if you just too attached to the pet or you message as the pet and things like that. Yeah, that can be a bit unattractive.
Have you watched The Ultimatum on Netflix, the new one, the queer love one?
No.
It's a show. It's a reality TV show where couples come in. They have one of the couple, like one of the two, have been given an ultimatum where either I want you to marry me or we have to break up. So they go onto the show.
I've seen a French. They've got a French version of that show, and I've seen that.
Yeah. And then they date someone else, and they live with their like trial wife, who's also in the experiment for 3 weeks. And then they go back to their original, and they decide they either have to. There's 3 options. They have to get engaged. They have to get engaged with their new partner, their trial wife, or they have to break up with their original partner. And there's one woman on there, and she has a dog, and she moves in with her trial wife, and they're getting along really well. They seem to have connected, and the trial wife is this really beautiful, sweet, gentle woman, and she's like, "Oh, I'm really excited. I love dogs." And then the other girl's like, "By the way, she's going to sleep in our bed." And then the trial wife is like, "Oh, I don't know how I feel about the dogs sharing the bed with us. Like, it's a really big dog. It was a husky. It's a small bed. And I kind of like having space in my room." And anyway, the woman just got the biggest ick. She was like, "Nah, if you don't love me, like if you don't respect my dog, this is never going to work." And she was saying like, "My dog is my baby. She will come before anyone else. She's my first priority. It's not you. If it's you or the dog, I'm picking the dog." And they'd known each other for like 3 days, these people. So I felt so bad for her. But I was like, it's funny how the original woman got the ick that someone said no to her dog being on the bed. But watching it, I was getting such ick that she was saying like, the dog comes first. Like, just...
That's a bit much, yeah. Look,
make a little compromise.
I understand people who have very strong bonds with their pets. I do, but I don't think I'd choose the pet over someone in my life. I think I'd choose a family member or friends over much. I do love my cat, but sorry.
So she ended up sleeping on the couch with the dog. She was so passive aggressive about it. Damn. Wouldn't negotiate, which I guess actually is, it's not an ick, it's more of a red flag when someone has like no willingness to compromise. I think is a huge red flag.
Yeah.
100%.
Agreed. Yeah. That's a big one.
And just to wrap up the last couple of icks that were on this list, breathing heavily, I agree. I don't know why it icks me. Referring to themselves in third person.
Who does that?
Oh my God, men. And all the time. It's so, I don't know why.
What's an example?
I'd get
Neil
a message.
did it. Neil thinks that's a good idea. Something like that.
Not like that casual, but actually kind of yes. But like I'd get a message on Tinder being like, "Jonathan really likes the way you wear this black dress, Eliza," or something. Or like, "This really excites Jonathan." And it happens so often. I was talking about it with my friend, and like, I'm like, there's like 1 in 4 guys, maybe not that much, but something crazy, would talk to themselves or reference themselves in third person, usually to actually, which is interesting that men did this to describe an emotion. Like it might be like, "Oh, Jack didn't like that," or "Jack's a bit sad now." And it's like, you can connect yourself to that emotion. You can, it's like a barrier to protect them. Yeah.
That's a bit, I don't know anyone who, well, I guess the men wouldn't be saying that to me, but I actually do. I've remembered one time I totally got the ick from someone. This is someone I had slept with before, and it was a casual thing. And she's from a different city, and she was in town again, and it was, we were planning to essentially do it again, but she came to. It was like before I was doing a show, and she was really loud but not in a like really bogany, and she wasn't like that last time, and just almost had a sort of croaky voice, and was just saying all these really sort of over the top outrageous things, and it completely turned me off, and I sort of ghosted her, and I probably should have said something, but that was just a massive
what would you
turn-off.
even say? Like, so I saw your true personality.
Yeah, you were just
got turned off. Yeah.
grossing me out, but that was the one instance I remember even thinking, wow, I must be getting old, because when I was 18, 19, 20, there's no way I would have
anything would have done.
turned down something like that if they were speaking. And it wasn't like, when I say speaking loudly, I don't mean just opinionated or just speaking in a commanding way. It was, but bogany would be the best word to describe it. It just came across as trashy, and it was a big turn off.
Speaking of sex icks, I went on a few dates. Actually, I think it was like the second time I met this guy, and he was training, I don't know, to be a pilot in the military, and he was almost done. So I don't know if that has some like niche to it or interesting background. But long story short, the first time, and I've spoken about this on this podcast before as well, the first time we kissed for like 10 seconds, and it was like immediately getting like passionate. And then he like pulls away, just fucking slapped me across the face. Just fully slapped me.
Damn.
Thinking it was sexy. I was like, oh
Were
my
you
God, I'm
Where
about to
were
get
you? Were you in the bedroom?
in my
or
apartment, in the living room.
And there was no other foreplay or anything. It was just 10-second kiss.
Yeah.
Big old slap.
He just slapped, and it was right across the cheek as well. I was so shocked. And I was like, and I thought I froze for a second, and I was like, oh my God, I'm about to get murdered by a man in my apartment. Fuck. And then he started trying to kiss me again. Oh, it was so weird. Shamefully, I continued with kissing, but just rolled with it a bit. And then after like, a few minutes, when I had like kind of, I don't know, I feel like I was in a state of freeze. I was like, why'd you do that? Like, why'd you fucking just slap me on the face? Anyway, yeah, he thought it'd be sexy. I don't think he was that experienced, so that's the conclusion I've come to, or he's got some idea from porn or something. It was so weird.
Yeah, that's quite intense. Got to ease into stuff like that.
Yeah, just ask someone. Like, I literally had never even said, I would be more understanding if in like a context of conversation I had said maybe, oh, I'm really into like BDSM and kink or something like that, or rough play. That I had never said anything of the sort. So I was just so taken aback. It's very random, but
Wow.
you live and you learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure he learned from that. I'm saying.
I don't think he did.
I've got a nice list here of some red flags. So, and this came out this year. Mm-hmm. And so these are some that a man has written about that he finds red flags in women. And a lot of these are quite general. Mm. So she's always criticizing you. Yeah, that's a pretty obvious one. She treats you with contempt. Yeah. That's pretty obvious. She gets defensive. This is an interesting one because sometimes this is just not just in a relationship, but generally speaking. I was talking to Max the other day, and it's a really virtuous quality in people when they have the ability to maturely listen to constructive criticism.
Yeah, I agree.
not a lot of people can do, and I haven't been perfect with that. It's not easy when someone's criticizing you to just not get defensive and to just sit and listen, and then to sort of sift through what you've heard and think about, okay, how much of that do I need to take on board? But that is, it's not only a red flag if someone gets extremely defensive every time you offer any sort of constructive criticism. So, for example, the passive aggressive response of, hey, if you ask a partner, hey, when you sometimes when you do this, it just feels suffocating or it feels a bit too much. Can we have a chat about it? And then they'll say, oh, fine, I just won't do anything then.
Yeah.
Fine then, just go date someone else.
Terrible.
And then you think, okay, either I have to apologize now or I'm just going to have to leave that one. Yeah. What else have we got here? She stonewalls you when there is a problem. That's similar to that one. Ooh, this is an interesting one. She has different cleaning habits to you. Does your girlfriend like things tidier than you? She will constantly be upset with you for not cleaning up more often. Ooh, that will cause controversy.
Yeah, I think that's common as well. Yeah.
Well, what do you think about things like that? Because I know you've said that you're not too
we've got that
worried
in
about.
reverse.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic, but that seems like such a common relationship issue where there's a mismatch of what people should be doing in terms of the housework and the standard to which something should be cleaned, and then you get into this weaponized incompetence or just resentment where someone just does it at such a better quality that they eventually end up doing all of it. And maybe the other person is either they're not trying or they're genuinely trying and they just can't do it to the same quality that person B can do it. It creates a lot of resentment, and then it just sort of it can even dissipate the sexual interest, and then that just creates more resentment, and it can genuinely lead to breaking up or divorce just because there's a mismatch in their ideals of cleanliness and tidiness. And I find that so interesting that something like that can balloon into a complete relationship catastrophe.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. And it's funny, like, we never had issues around it, but it is like an issue we had to navigate where for us, we had to negotiate like what was the most important tasks that need to be completed every day. So every single day, because I'm at home with Remy and Adrian works, I make the beds, do a quick tidy of the bedroom. Usually the issue is my laundry, my clothes pile on the floor. Well, now it's no longer on the floor. And every couple of days I do a vacuum, and every night the kitchen has to be cleaned, like spotless clean. So the kitchen's always clean. And then on the weekends, on Saturdays, we take turns cleaning. Like one looks after Remy while the other cleans, and we negotiate like who's going to do what. Like, does someone clean the floors? Does someone vacuum? Whatever. And then when Remy goes down for his 2-hour lunchtime nap, we just clean together, and then we relax for the rest of the weekend. So that's like, we've kind of like found the motion that works for us. My best friend, her biggest issue in her relationship is this exact problem where she always says to me, like, and I relate to her partner in a lot of ways and personality as well, which is interesting. So she always says like, oh, it's just so frustrating. I wish that, he worked at home on Wednesday. Why wouldn't he think I should mop the floors before Annabelle comes home? Like, for once, I just wish he would get up and mop the floors or vacuum without me having to ask him. And I'm thinking like, I would never think to mop the floors. Like, just like on a random Wednesday because my partner's coming home from work and I'm, working from home, I would just do it when I felt like it or if we agreed to do it. But this has been an issue for her and him nonstop. And it's so hard because I almost want to tell her, because I relate to him, like if there are specific things you want to get done, you should tell him what specifically you want to be done and how often, and in the same way that's what I needed. But then I also understand her point of like, this is learned helplessness or this is weaponized incompetence where it's more labor for me to have to communicate consistently you do this, you do this, you do this, can you do this? And then it also changes the dynamic of the relationship where she's like, it's that mother-child dynamic where she has to micromanage what he's doing, control what he's doing, and he's like, get off my back, but at the same time, then he's not contributing to the household equally. So for anyone in this predicament, I would say make an agreement once on who's doing what, how often and when, or if you're doing it together, whatever, and stick to that agreement so she doesn't have to continuously remind you or you don't have to continuously remind her. And if someone is not fulfilling their end of the agreement, the issue isn't their cleanliness or tidiness or whatever. The issue is then their respect or their ability to follow through. So it becomes a whole different relationship dynamic and issue from there. But yeah, so common. So
common, unbelievably common. And there's also just some people might not even have that same attention to detail. They could try to clean something to the best of their ability, but it's never going to be up to the standard of someone else who is more potentially disgust sensitive. And very common relationship dynamic. You're a unique case where you're less disgust sensitive when it comes to cleanliness and organization, and your male partner might be more, but usually it seems to be the other way around now. When I've had a live-in girlfriend, those sorts of issues have come up, and we would either negotiate or some sort of other compromise would come about. But it did cause some arguments, and
it's hard as well when someone wants you to do it in the way they do it, because that friend I was just talking about, I remember when they came over one time and they were laughing about this fight they had. And even though it's so stupid, they genuinely had a big fight about this where she said she was craving some bread, and then he went to the bakery and got this specific loaf of sourdough, and then he pre-cut it like really thin slices, and she was so mad because she wanted to cut the slices herself to the thickness that she wants. And that was kind of like a dynamic that they have when she's like, also she's really good at cooking, so when she really wants him to cook, so he goes up and cooks, and then she's like, oh, don't put the onions in the pan without oil or spices or something like that. And she kind of wants to intervene because she's like, it'll be 1,000 times better if you do this. But she's now having to learn, like, I can't just give him a task and then dictate exactly how it's completed. I just have to sit back and trust it and just let him do his thing. And my other friend's partner, he's one of those people that when we hang out, he hates, because I rinse the dishes after I eat. I give a rinse and put them in the dishwasher. He finds that so disgusting that I don't hand wash with soap and then put it into the dishwasher. And I was like, but that's washing it twice. But that's a disagreement we always have. So and it's hard. So my friend who dates him has adapted as well. She hand washes everything and then puts into the dishwasher as well. Okay. So they've just
changing gender roles here. This is this is from at least what it seems to be. That's unique, that the man is more concerned about the cleanliness of the dishes and things. But there you go.
To be fair, that's the only thing he's like weird about, and she is the really clean, tidy person. But he just has this one thing about how the dishes are done. But weird.
Because I can understand both perspectives. If someone's genuinely trying, if they're not, maybe just either they're not used to doing the cleaning, which is not necessarily a good thing nowadays, or they just might not be as concerned. There's certain things I remember in previous relationships where I like to think, from my perspective, I would clean the cups, quite well, and then there'd maybe be like a tiny little, every now and then, a tiny little something on the cup, a little mark here or there, and then she would take it as a sign of disrespect that I wasn't paying enough attention, and then I would get defensive because I thought, why? Okay, one little thing here, like give me some slack. I didn't even see that till you pointed it out. So I don't know. Maybe that's me. Maybe that's her. It's Hopefully
Yeah.
you can find someone who's sort of within the same sort of realm of cleanliness
Yeah.
and organization that you are, so that you don't have too many arguments about it. But
Yeah, it's so
that's
funny
such
how
a
it's
common
one of
one.
those things you want to have in common in a relationship. Like you want to have, there's a lot of things you should have in common, like shared religion or religious goals or understandings or financial goals and understandings, whatever. And then there's cleanliness. And I remember when Adrian and I first started dating, and I'm not a messy person. Anytime that someone comes over, they say like the place always looks nice. I always have candles going, but I'm just like not as meticulous as he is. Or if I have like a tea by the couch or something, I'll leave like my teacup on the armchair of the couch, and that triggers him. And to be fair, I've spilt the tea on the couch like 45 times. But when we first started dating, and I would do that, and he was like, he'd always take my cup into the kitchen for me. And I'd be like, this is going to be one of those things that you hate in a couple of years' time. And he's like, no, I think it's really cute. I think it's adorable. I love that you do that. Yeah, now he hates it.
Yeah.
He's always like, just put it in the kitchen. When you're done, just put it in the kitchen.
Honeymoon period compared to
Yeah.
what I can imagine
So
when you've
blinding.
got a baby and you're on 2 hours sleep, and then let's see if we find a kid then. Yeah,
Nothing's
well,
cute after
hopefully
then.
AI can just do everything for us soon.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I got a
true.
robot vacuum cleaner a year ago. Oh, best investment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was $700, so I thought, okay,
Wow.
but amazing.
Is it one of those little ones that like you just let it go around on its own?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
it does it so well, and at little edges here and there, I'll get the handheld
Yeah.
one and finish it off, but worth the money. Yeah. Really, really, really good. And now they're getting quite advanced. They say that there'll be self-cleaning kitchens maybe in 10 years and things like that. So hopefully these
That's wild.
issues will be issues of the past, but at the same time, I'm sure some new issues will come up. Like, oh, this AI that you like, I don't like it. And we're going to have a fight about
Yeah.
that or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember even when my parent, like my dad, tried to make a concerted effort to sort of cook more and do more housework duties. But even when I was a teenager, we remember thinking his cooking was just. I love the man, but his cooking was garbage. It was so bad, and so you didn't really know what to do. Whether you just have to put up with it for a few months till hopefully he gets better, or just mum had to do it. But then, yeah, there's the perception of an unequal share of duties there can
Yeah.
cause a lot of resentment. So
Yeah.
it's seems so simple, but these are the things that actually are probably more important than some of those really big shared opinions and well, early on in a relationship, those big ones are important, but then these little ones and the ability to negotiate and come to a compromise that leaves everyone reasonably happy seems like like a big test for a lot of relationships. And then there's this happens in professional environments as well, where someone might feel like they're doing the lion's share of the work, or someone else at a similar professional level perceive someone else to be not as competent as them. And if they're in a team or they're in some sort of group project, it can cause a lot of frustration and resentment. And then the other person can feel like they're being micromanaged. And yeah, it's a very common issue in not just romantic relationships, but all relationships.
For sure. I've got a big one. Men that, or anyone, that keep you a secret or keeping your relationship a secret. So they haven't introduced you to their friends or their kids, their family. And it's like you're a year or two in, then you start wondering, am I the side chick? I think that's a huge, huge one. There's something always sus about people that or they just don't want people to know that they're in. They don't want other women to know they're in a relationship. They want to maintain the facade that they're single or whatever. So if your man's hiding you, it's a huge red flag. Unless the only caveat to that I'll say is like cultural relationships, there, when someone's like, I'm expected to be in an arranged marriage or something, or there is a genuine threat or safety concern for people to know I'm in this relationship. Or when I went to, when I used to work with a lot of like Arabic girls, they would date men and they wouldn't tell their families because they couldn't date without the intention to marry. So in those cases, I understand, but in any other case, that's a no.
Yeah, you want someone to be proud of you. You want someone to a reasonable degree, flaunt you.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I understand for you though as well. It's different as well when you have like
social media,
high profile.
Yeah. I do. That's actually caused some arguments in previous relationships where I didn't want to share my intimate partner on my social media because I thought, well, this is just a way for me to present my work to the world, and I don't want to. I was never comfortable. For this is going to be hard for a lot of people to hear, but 10 years ago, not a lot of people shared a lot of their personal life on social media. That was a trend that seemed to evolve over the last 10 years, and I was never comfortable doing that. I just would share thoughts or jokes or videos, and then, she took it a bit personally and thought, well, why are you not, you're not proud of me? Do you not think I'm attractive and things like that? And again, it would cause a few little squabbles. But I still I don't like to share too much. I'm not a vlogger or a.
Yeah.
I guess this podcast is more about me personally and relationships and things. But most of what I put out online is just my work or my ideas and opinions. And every now and then I'll have a photo with a friend or a partner. But I try to. I think there's a reason it's called a personal life. I don't want to share too much, and it's nothing to do with the actual partner. It's just more me. Some people kind of. But then if you've got a profile, you think, well, hang on a minute. Do you actually like me for me, or are you using me to get yourself a profile? Because a lot of people do that in this kind of toxic social media influencer world. A lot of people just date each other because they know they can get a bunch of followers out of it. And I'd be terrified of something like that. Yeah. So I think maybe as a defense mechanism, I sort of left my partners off social media for as long as possible, just to ensure that, in fact, that was an ick. That was a red flag if it was really early on and someone was saying, you should post a photo of us. And then I'd think, this is the fourth date. No.
I just met you, mate.
And then you immediately think, all right, do you like my profile or do you like me? And so that's a unique one that maybe, not everyone can relate to. But
niche,
Yeah.
But so true. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other?
Oh, yeah. I was just, God, I have 1,000 of them.
Oh, you got,
don't have any time.
Let's go.
But I run through some. Mummy's boys. So
and daddy's girls as well.
Yeah, I feel like they're different though. Like daddy's girls I can see more of an ick, but mummy's boys I see sometimes as a red flag in the sense I love a guy that has a good relationship with his mother. That's essential to me. But when you're a mummy's boy, it's like I can't run any decision without my mother's input, and the mother's constantly interjecting themselves into the relationship, competing against the girlfriend or the wife or whatever. Those are major issues. Or when the guy chooses his mum over his partner. So I don't see that as much with daddy's girls. Like that's those same dynamics. I see like the red flags for different reasons, definitely. But yeah, that one's a pretty like big one.
That's
and when
fair
I
enough.
looked at on TikTok for red flags in men, the biggest one, sorry if you can hear Remy screaming in the background, he's playing, was men that have a girl best friend. That was the most common one.
And I'm sure it would relate the other way as well, where I would... Yeah, I'm in two minds about it, but every time I have dated a girl who has a guy best friend, it's eyebrow raising just how close they are. You know, there was one where she mentioned that it's almost like this is probably an unnecessary amount of psychological analysis here, but that opposite sex best friend is some kind of test to see how loyal or to see how jealous or possessive a partner could become, because some of the things that this girl I was dating said about that male best friend, oh yeah, no, I used to like him, but now I don't, and we're just friends. And then already you think, oh, all right, okay. And then you feel like the possessive one getting concerned about it. And then, one time she went and watched the sunset with him, and they cut up all this fruit and sort of, it was very date-like. And then I got jealous, and I said, "Why you can't do that?" And then she said, "Oh well, I was talking about you the whole time, but okay." It was a very immature and horrible relationship.
It's never about like testing you to be jealous. It's they want you to be jealous. When they're talking about it like that, like saying, I had feelings for him, but I don't anymore, and going on dates, they want you to be jealous. I've had lots of guy best friends. I've lived with 4 guy best friends. And I've had a lot more as well. And let me tell you, I no longer have guy best friends, because every single guy best friend I've ever had, except for one, my most recent housemate, and I love him, bless him, every single other guy that I've been really close with has confessed feelings for me as soon as I'm single. Or basically, as soon as I'm single. Every single one of them, hands down. And it's been beyond disappointing. So I don't have guy best friends anymore.
There's a lot of guys would also have that red flag about women, and the women can sometimes be not think that the guy is romantically interested in her, and in I'm sure in many situations they're actually not. But sometimes you just raise eyebrows thinking, really?
And it's always the one, I always say this, but it's always the one that you have that like gut feeling about, and then you end up being right. And I've been on the bad side of that, where 2 ex-boyfriends ago said about my most recent ex-boyfriend, who I'd been friends with we'd been working together since I was 19, and we were best friends. And he was like, I feel like so-and-so has feelings for you. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm friends with his girlfriend, kind of. Like, we get along, and he's not like that. He's always said I'm way too, like, wild for him, kind of. Not wild in that way, you know what I mean. And anyway, he ended up being my next boyfriend. And that was a weird.
There you go.
And the funny thing is that even though we dated for like 2 years, and I did really love him, but it never, like, to me, I always had this gut feeling that I wish we had just stayed friends. But I felt like, oh, we've been best friends for so many years and we get along so well. It makes sense. Yeah, no, like it was just, but yeah, the original boyfriend had that feeling all along. So that's,
there's also
interesting.
There's something to be said about emotional infidelity, where, say, someone who's very close with a coworker, or there's another one. People who say they have a work wife or a work husband. No. What is that? That's that's just weird. That's a big red flag. And then
that's what I get the most common, most frequent messages about on Instagram from people in relationships. I have feelings for a coworker. What do I do? All the time. And that's why I wanted to do a podcast, I forgot, on like proximity attraction, where when you're like exposed to someone or you're in close proximity time and time again to someone, you suddenly find them more attractive than they actually are, or you're just attracted to them. And that's why coworker relationships and affairs are so common and so frequent. But if you'd spent a few weeks away with them, or if you'd gone on a date with them without them being your coworker, chances are you probably never would have even gained an attraction to them. So it's a hard dynamic, that one.
And there's a status dynamic at play, because I hear a lot of girls on social media talk about how they're not sure if they're attracted to someone because of their personality or because they're in a professional subordinate position to a man who might be a superior or a boss, and also vice versa.
Yeah.
And there's a few interesting socio-psychological dynamics at play in modern workplaces like that. And I would be very interested to see more research and things like that. You know, what are the factors that might cause someone to develop feelings for a coworker, and what, you know, is it usually professional acquaintances on a similar sort of level of authority and status, or is it usually some sort of tension there between the professional status, and as a result that creates a lot of sexual tension? Do we sort of confuse that? It's a pretty interesting dynamic to me.
Personally, I feel like it's equal both ways. I feel like there's that the boss and subordinate dynamic is self-explanatory in that way, in the way that you explained it. And I think the other one where you're equal colleagues is equally as common, just based on shared experiences. Like the highest rates of cheating is in people that work with police, paramedics, where they have such and doctors, nurses, etc., have such shared and unique experiences that by the time you get home, you don't want to offload that onto your partner or talk about it, or they wouldn't understand it, or it's just an everyday thing. So then when they share that experience or share that trauma with someone else, / also working really late hours, 3 a.m. lulls when nothing's happening and you're just having deep and meaningful conversations, you're bonding in so many different ways. So it's a recipe for disaster. And you know, when I was single, and I just, knowing that literally anyone that ever told me I'm a cop or I'm a doctor, I just didn't even give them a chance. And it's a judgment I hold, and I'm ashamed of it. Like, obviously not every single doctor is not a cheater, and every single cop isn't a cheater. But I was just like, no, I'm not risking it. I've never been cheated on thus far. I'm not about to put myself in the firing line of being paranoid or even just worrying about it, just wondering. I don't want to experience it ever. So
interesting.
now I date a tradie. Works with men.
Well, there you go. Yeah, there's less opportunities for tradies to cheat, isn't there? So
yeah.
Look, if you date a comedian, there's not many. There's definitely far fewer female comedians than male comedians, although that is definitely changing. And actually, it is a very incestuous environment, to be fair.
What is the rate, just off the, like, in your experience, of female comedians? Would you say that there is more gay female comedians than straight, or would you say it's split or more straight that you know of?
I think in the comedy world, there's definitely a higher incidence of LGBT representation, and I think that's mainly because it's an artistic, creative industry, and there is a big correlation between artistry and creativity with the LGBT community. Specifically female comedians, and whether they're I don't know. I don't have any I don't have any data. I would guess there'd also be a higher incidence, although it's not overwhelming. I don't think there's an overt amount of lesbian or bisexual or transgender female comedians compared to straight women.
Right.
So I don't think it's, if anything, there might be more gay male comedians relative to the general population.
Wow.
In Australia, there's quite a lot. Yeah. So I don't know. Well, I guess I don't know, this is totally stereotypical here, but, the gay men are the ones that are stereotypically considered more artsy and having more feminine traits, whereas lesbian women are stereotypically considered to have more masculine traits and might not be attracted to an artistic industry. But that's just, me theorizing there. I don't know, but yeah, no, I don't think there's a higher a notably higher incidence of gay female comedians. They're definitely there, but
I only asked that because I feel like my For You page, like only gay female comedians come up on my For You page, and you, of course. But Yeah, and I was like, is it that there's so many lesbian comedians, or is this just targeted for me? I guess
Yeah, I think that's just targeted for you.
yeah, I think it is. Learned so much about myself from
go.
TikTok. TikTok's definitely telling me I'm gay all the time.
It's telling you something. Yeah, that's the conspiracy theory. That
Yeah,
TikTok's
yeah.
turning
It tells me
everyone
I'm gay and it tells me I'm ADHD. That's like all my videos.
Oh, but that TikTok tells everyone it's their
Yeah,
ADHD.
yeah,
And
that is
TikTok's
true.
probably making people have a lower attention span as well with their
Yeah,
5 second
that.
high intensity videos. I'm trying to
The
limit
only
my
reason
TikTok
I
use.
feel like I could be ADHD is because my brother is ADHD and I have my other brother and my father also neurodivergent. And the very niche reasons is that misophonia and hypermobility, which I have like chronic hypermobility, are both signs of ADHD. That's my only conclusion. I probably don't, but statistically, that's there. It's in the family. It's big time. But everyone I know is basically seeking an ADHD diagnosis. But let's not get into that. That's a whole other.
That's an
That's a podcast
interesting
for another
podcast
day.
though, because
Yeah.
it's almost, some would say it could be becoming almost like a cultural trend, and there
Yeah.
are factors that are causing people to experience symptoms that mimic ADHD that might not necessarily be the
Yes.
ADHD, such as mainly
Yes.
social media and scrolling is obviously destroying
Yeah.
our attention spans.
Yep.
And it's not some of the standards people also have saying, I can only focus for 2 hours and then I can't focus anymore. That's normal.
Well, I also feel like people are getting more diagnosed with ADHD because the definition of ADHD and the understanding about ADHD is stepping a lot further away from just the inability of focusing, which people were like, I can emotionally regulate and focus okay, so I don't have ADHD. And then you find out there's like a million other little things that might be more likely that you have rather than focusing. For example, you might actually be a hyperfixator where you focus so intently on one task or one topic, etc. So you might be like, well, I don't have ADHD because I hyperfixate on this or I focus so hard when I'm doing my art or something. But that in itself is also an ADHD symptom along with a million other things. So it's definitely interesting, especially with the way I say that as well all the time. Like, well, the way we use social media is bringing in symptoms to us. And I see on like Reddit a lot in my parenting forums that I'm in, so many people like, I'm pretty certain my 2-year-old has ADHD. And then upon questioning, turns out their 2-year-old spends 6 hours a day on an iPad. And it's like, come on.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, how much of it is the environment and how much of it is the sort of the
Yeah.
actual genetics that people might have. And
Yeah.
I'm not, by no means an expert in this at all, but it's from what I've heard, it sort of has this sort of epigenetic context to it where a lot of
Yeah.
people might be carriers of the gene, and then
Yeah.
there's certain environmental factors that trigger its manifestation and
Yes.
how overt that manifestation is. And diet is another big thing that can cause, when I was a kid, I had Fruit Loops for breakfast, and then I'd go to the canteen and have an icy cup, which was just
Oh, yeah.
like an ice
Apple
block.
juice? Yeah.
Yeah, I had juice. I
Yeah.
just was filling my body with sugar.
Yeah.
And look,
red food
there
dye.
wasn't the nutritional education that we have today, and yeah, my parents maybe just didn't know a lot about that, so can't sit here and get resentful about that. But yeah, I do wonder how much would that have impacted my not just my health and my attention span and my mental well-being when I was a child, but over the long term as well. When you're in such a important period for growth. Yeah, maybe I could have been, who knows, I could have been 6'2", eh? But the other thing is sleep is a big one where people are just getting far less sleep. And a lot of that is also because of all of these interact with each other. So if you eat poorly and are on social media all day, you can't sleep well. And if you don't sleep well, if you're underslept and don't have adequate nutrition, you can experience a lot of symptoms that might mimic a genetic issue when actually it's environmental. So yeah, it's important to go to a professional and not diagnose yourself from TikTok. Just go to an actual professional, because there's these people who are diagnosing on TikTok from people who don't have any training, and then they're taking drugs that they don't necessarily even need, and it's not good.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed, 100%. We should definitely do a podcast on that one day.
Yeah, and epigenetics, I'm reading a book about that. I just finished that book, actually. Fascinating. So fascinating. Just how much of our genes are actually sort of, you could see it as more of a tree, and then which branch those genes become activated, sort of which genes are activated based on a certain branch are determined by environmental factors. Even, say, if they did experiments where a woman who was pregnant experienced not full-on starvation, but nutritional deficiency for a certain amount of time of the pregnancy, and then even though it was 3 months and then after that everything was back to normal, there were adverse health impacts on that child all throughout their adulthood, and then sometimes it even manifested later on in their life because certain genes were triggered during that time of nutritional deficiency. And also, if you have a physiological deficiency, like a lack of just skin-on-skin contact or just physical intimacy and connection with a caregiver, that can massively increase your incidence of anxiety and other negative mental health impacts. So, so fascinating.
And you think about intergenerational trauma and our Indigenous communities, Holocaust victims, etc., and how that's kind of come down through the generations. It's so devastating, and it's so, but also fascinating as well to see the impact that is still carried on so many years later, and is so true and so relevant still to people. So it is an interesting thing. I was actually listening to a podcast today about how even past the point of birth, obviously, and just kids, how they're so attuned to their caregivers, usually the mother, that there were studies done that when a mother witnessed it was a bombing. I don't know if they actually mentioned what type, if it was 9/11 or whatever, but it was a bombing in close proximity. If the mother reacted really scared, saying we got to run, that child carried that trauma based on the mother's reaction with them for life, and had a lot of complex trauma and PTSD long term. And for other mums that responded saying, okay, we got to find the shelter, we're going to kind of almost making it like a game, trying to protect them from the trauma of it, the kids resolved that within days and didn't have long-term residual impacts of it. And it's just even I was learning that when you're breastfeeding or feeding your baby, you're relaxing your baby, but your baby is also relaxing you. And in the same way, which kind of seems obvious, but what's also interesting is that when you get excited, your baby also gets excited, and vice versa. When your baby's excited, you get excited. So you have this ongoing relationship of impacting each other's emotional states through infancy, and how that is, and their experiences in infancy is completely determines their attachment style and the outlook of the rest of their lives. Obviously, attachment styles can be changed later in life, but it's a difficult process, etc. But yeah, fascinating stuff.
Yeah, very fascinating. I think we've got to do a podcast on that soon.
Yeah, that's another day. I'm sitting in the dark now.
Yeah, we've got to end this before you get into pitch black.
Every time we do a podcast and it's getting dark, I'm like, I have to buy a light, and then I forget. I'm going to do it immediately now. I actually did buy a light, but I couldn't get it. I couldn't figure it out.
Okay.
But I'll buy another one. I look so spooky. Anyways.
Yeah, you do look kind of funny there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, share it on social media. Tell your friends about it. Give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you didn't like it, hey, just keep your mouth and other parts of your body shut, and you don't have to tell anyone. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
See you next week. Bye.